So we are on day 6 of the 9 days of consciousness. We're at 6, which is the belief. So
yeah, and believe. And you know, I as I was thinking about this, and I'm actually gonna I'm gonna do what I said I wasn't gonna do, which is I just can't see how speaking about the 6 without really explaining that we have this is a choice point. Okay. You know, it's like we can go 2 different ways. I mean, yes. Depending on how we've started, how we've approached the process of creation, yes. We've either gone in it from a state of ignorance and separation, or we've gone into it from a state of connection. And the results are going to be totally different, you know, and it's just so interesting how everything kind of relates because, you know, like Christians say, it was 6 days, you know, and then everything was complete. And we have to remember that we started with the idea and we get to the 6, and what happens at the 6 is that idea has taken on individuality. But what kind? You know, and you can't ignore that either you go through life from a state of, you know, disconnected, I'm a human being, that's all there is, or you're in a state of being connected. And unfortunately, whatever being connected is so polluted from so many different ways, whether it's New Age or religion or, you know, I mean, to find what that really means is such a challenge in life. Yes,
I agree. And, you know, it's funny because I was thinking along the same lines going into this is that, you know, it's kind of, it's a looking back point because things have happened. You've been through the experience. And it's sort of that point where you're faced with like, yeah, what am I coming away with here and moving forward with? And just like you said, if you came from a place of ignorance, it's just not going to have it's going to be very confusing when you're here.
I love that distinction though, because if you've gone the path of being connected, then it's an integration, it's an awareness. What am I coming away with? There was a point for this whole experience. If you've gone from the path of disconnected, it's where have I arrived? Yes. So you're at this place of suffering, self-denial, sickness. All of those numbers are a number 6. I mean, all those words have the 6 vibration, you know? So that's a great way to you know, a great distinction.
And I think it was, you know, I love that song, You Turn My 6s to 9s by Big Wild. Isn't that it's a good, I've been listening to it for about a year now. And I think a lot of people associate 6 with the human condition, the, I don't want to say the lower form, but just, you know, the earthly realm. And then the 9 is kind of this, you know, God realm or field of consciousness realm. So it is interesting that when we think of the human condition, we always think, you know, like something like sex. We can go love or lust, or, you know, we have these 2 options of, and I think it was interesting last night. I was thumbing through my Bible, and one of the first verses I came to was in Luke, and there were a bunch of elders that asked Jesus, basically, why do you hang out with drunks and people that, you know, are sinners? And he basically says, like, you know, everybody deserves a chance here, and it's not like people can't be redeemed or whatever, and it's not about being perfect the whole time. It's just about getting up the next day and it moving forward better. So I thought I'd never even seen that in there, but
right. And I think we, you know, to have even a sense of empathy to appreciate how someone gets to the place where they believe they're a sinner. They believe it because that's their actions, okay? Yes. I mean, when we believe something, it's going to show in the world, even though we think it's not. And I think, you know, as you started this, it's important that at the 6, it's like we had the belief at the 3, and at the 6, now we believe. Because we've had the experience, and so therefore having the experience reinforce whatever it is we thought to be true. And so...
Oh, Nancy's in here. Hi, Nancy.
Wow.
Sorry. I got excited. I saw her join.
I know, that's like, exciting. Yay. So when someone, you know, when someone it's to appreciate when someone believes something, you can't change that person on what they believe. They have to take on another idea and go through the experience of it to believe what you believe. That's because you say, hey, this is it. They can, and so many times, how many times have people nodded their head? Yeah, and you think they totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And you turn around and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because right in the definition, the word conviction comes up. And to have a conviction, there has to have been something to judge. Like there has to be data that was assembled somehow.
Right.
So it really does, knowing this creative process and, why we're doing all of this and explaining every number is that it, acknowledging that it is a process. And I think just us taking our own time to explore our own thoughts and our feelings and and be a part of our own journey is helpful for all of us.
Right. Because, and once again, looking at, we have the 6 has 2 paths, because when you arrive at the 6, you have a state of being. Okay. So that state of being, if you've been on an isolated, separated standpoint and you haven't connected into your greater self, the part where there is no separation, you arrive at the 6 in a place of suffering and a place of self-denial.
Yeah. And then the rest of the journey can be pretty tough from there.
We all can attest to that, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's when we had gone through our coaching of this, you said, this is the standing wave point. And I think it's really interesting when we talk about, like in mathematics, we have sine waves, and that's kind of the same thing. And then like sine and sin are so close to each other in wording. And it really, it's, it is this, maybe you can go into the standing wave a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, it's standing, how to do this simply.
I know, it gets.
Okay. So, to appreciate what we're saying, integrating with the spiritual, it actually is there from science. It's there from math. And, it's something that Tesla knew. It's something that quantum mechanics knows. And, at the 9, we have the node, as you said, like we think 9 is spiritual. Well, everything in life, it's so interesting that words that have a 9 value and where 9 comes up in so many different things, whether it's religion, creation, or, a song, we kind of intuitively know this stuff. And so in this triangle, a 9 goes down to the 3, where we're starting that creation. It comes out to 3 and polarizes something. And then over at the 6, that it connects back at the 6 to the materialization. And a standing wave is a wave that the amplitude and the throff, they're going back and forth between the 3 and the 6. Just imagine that way. And so something is staying in place, and that's what reality is created from, is waves that are staying in place, because you have the 2 opposing, the opposition. So that's why we have what appears to be duality, which is really the polarity, because things are going like this for us to even have something that stays still. Yeah.
And it's so interesting too when you get into scientific terms, especially around electricity, but even something like resistance, and if you're at this 6 point and you're feeling resistance, something's not flowing. There's
there's and they're stuck over there, rather than having the 2 opposing waves come together to create that balance. Because 6 is also, you're balanced. So if you've gone the way of the spiritual, you're in a balanced state. And that's where self-expression occurs. So if you've gone the way of connecting with force, God, you can call it it doesn't matter what we call that term, but it's a matter of a place we have to get to ourselves. And when we get there, and we get there through the voice, that's why the oracle of the voice, and allow our voice to be expressed, then we have, we're in a standing wave that we choose. Rather than, oh, shoot, where am I? And that's the thing to appreciate, too, as we get into these places and we're in a place of self-denial, that situation perpetuates itself because we're unconscious of it. We don't know where we are. All we know is we're suffering, we're in pain, we're sick. But how did we get here? What is this wave comprised of? Because it's comprised of some belief that we unconsciously gave our attention to, and it created. It has become a part of our life.
And maybe we can speak to here too, how beliefs aren't necessarily fixed, and how they can evolve and change. And why, I mean, why do you think so many people hang on to beliefs so strongly? You know, I think a lot of people, they don't want their beliefs challenged, or they don't want to change them. And I mean, I don't know that I have an answer for this, but.
Well, it's uncertainty, because 6 is also uncertain. So when you allow yourself to trust life and you're in the moment, it's all present, but you don't really know it's present until you allow it to come through you. Yeah. So you have to let go. And if you have a belief of something, if you want something else, it's like having, you know, somebody giving you $100 and you're holding on to $1. If you don't let go of that $1, you can't take the 100, even though it looks so good. I mean, I want to take it. So it's that not being able to let go because of the fear of uncertainty, you know, and not knowing. And that's what's so wild about all of this is we go back to the 2. We have to be able to perceive it. So, you know, not being able to perceive it, and, you know, all we can perceive is our situation. And even though it's bad, you know, we still can't let go of it, because how do you perceive something else? And that's why not knowing this process, that, oh, it's so simple. Oh, I just need to go get another idea and really just give myself the time to focus on that idea and perceive it and bring it through the core of my being, and it's so I can feel it through all of my senses and allow myself for that to be my vision. Yeah.
Well, and I have this question here too. So when we get to the 6, and let's say we have the unconscious path and the conscious path. So on the conscious path, I assume it's just kind of like, oh, nice, and we head to 9 and start again. On the unconscious path, are we going to go through 7, 8, and 9, or do we kind of reroute to 1, or what really happens there?
Well, we'll talk about that with the 7 tomorrow, because and just to head off on the 7, what's going to happen is you're going to try to control things. Yeah. Rather than having vision, you're trying to control because you can't see. Well, how could you have myopia rather than vision.
And I think it's, I always just check the little tarot cards just to see, because the numbers always correspond with the hero's journey. And it's interesting, in 6, all of them are really reflective cards. Like if you pull them out, it's kind of a, it's a taking inventory sort of standpoint of like, you know, you're either going to give yourself kudos at this point, or, ooh, that didn't feel so good. Maybe we need to rearrange.
Right. And even if you arrive at the 6, you can arrive at the 6 from a standpoint of greed, where you've accomplished, you've made your goal, you feel like you're the king and I'm wonderful. And so, and then rather than integrating that back and allowing a radiance of beauty, you go back and you start something else to conquer. You're back to conquer something else. So that's how, you know, Genghis Khan or somebody can go, you know, conquer everything, you know, because there's no connection with the spirit. There's, you know, and that's what we've even witnessing, where, you know, people are unsatiable. I mean, they just can't get satisfied. And that's what we, you know, I looked at that one day. This was a while back. I was going, wow, that's the difference between the architecture we have now and then when we had in the, what is it, the Hellenistic stage? Yeah, that just came through my path last night or something, where there was a time to create that beauty in the architecture. There was that little phase until and then we went into the dark ages back then too. Yeah, you know, where that you took the time to allow, because spirit and life is really alive. You know, when you look at those square buildings, stuff, they don't look alive. They don't feed your soul. They just feel dead. They just,
well, here in Buffalo specifically, we came up in the time of brutalist architecture. So a lot of our stuff is just big concrete buildings that all look like prisons. That's what the newspaper I worked at, that was like a very famous brutalist building. So yeah, they're very imposing. And, you know, I think just to go back a little bit on your point, just thinking of this kind of the 6, you know, the ability for it to be very hedonistic. And like you said, you know, there's plenty of people that have an idea, know the creative process, go through it, they get rich, they get everything they want. And there's people that sit on the other side and go, how is this fair? How is there a God? How is there this conscious field if these idiots can, you know, and well, they're not idiots, but these people can do that. And I'm over here being a good person, and I'm not getting zilch.
And I have nothing.
Yeah, but I think it really is important. You know, I think everybody gets what's coming to them, you know, at some point. But what's interesting is that there's so many people that get to that 6 and they get the riches, they get the things, but there's still like this unfulfillment. There's this like, and they need more. And then it keeps growing that way.
Yeah, and that's the whole point of we have to connect to the spiritual. I mean, we have the choice. And that's the whole thing of understanding at the mind, where we can separate out and forget that we're a part of life.
Yeah.
And think that we're doing stuff for life. I mean, we're trying to get life. I mean, how many people do you know who, I mean, you just look at them and and it doesn't matter how much they have, you can just feel their hunger for life.
Yeah, yeah. And, I was thinking earlier too, just with like, even in the scientific field, like we have all these things that people believe are completely set in stone. And any real scientist will tell you they're all a hypothesis. We never totally know. We can never completely 100% say that this is right. And it's so interesting that I believe, just like when the printing press came up and we had an explosion of information out there and people started doing more, we had the internet, even more multi-dimensional explosion of information. So I would venture to say that we are heading into another age of enlightenment. And what is cool about that is that I've always found historically, science is always chasing to explain spirit, to explain phenomena.
Consciousness,
So why science gets to a point of denying it so much in like mainstream media and that is very interesting to me.
Right. And and the whole time they're looking for it. I mean, to the point now where they've got a mathematical formula to explain consciousness, you know, and this is what's going into AI. And consciousness from that standpoint is that you can make a machine aware, but you can't make a machine alive. You can't bring a voice into machine. You can't bring self-expression into machine, Right. And those are the things, that's what we have the opportunity to do. But it's so wild is the process, the laws of the universe are the same. Doesn't matter how you use them. It's still going to work the same. It's the experience that's going to be different.
And, I think it's so cool too, like in quantum science, which was getting really big when I was probably in junior high and high school. And I remember they were searching for the God gene at the time. They wanted to know what's the gene that makes all the other expression happen. And it's like every time they go smaller, it's like now we've discovered quarks and nanoparticles. And it's like God never, or conscious field, whatever, it just never stops. Like you can, as far as you can look out is as far as you can look in,
Right. And that whole thing, I mean, I'm going to go back to something you said earlier too about how science, all of these things are just theories, and we're led to believe that it's truth. And even the germ theory was never proven. People don't even realize it. There's really no proof that there's some germ that's going to come and get you, But the whole point and the key word in there is believe.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's all a theory until you believe it. And once you believe it, it can be true in your world, no matter what that is. So that's the science chasing its tail sort of thing. It makes this hypothesis and it believes it. And then, they even say it's based on the observer. That's what all quantum mechanics is about.
The wave or the particle.
See what you believe.
Well,
so that should...
Oh, go ahead. No, you can finish up.
No, but I think that's something that we should embrace and go, I'm going to see what I believe.
Yeah.
Why am I choosing to take what, I believe from outside when I'm going to see what I believe? And even if I take it from outside, I'm only going to see it if I believe it. I have the choice to believe something is true or not. That's what we all have to realize. I have the choice to, to put together, assemble what I want to create as a belief and go through the steps. And so it's something that and you go beyond, when you connect with the spiritual path too, or God, whatever the source, you go even beyond believing, because all of this exists, and that's the thing. When you're out there believing and trying to prove something and you have to get other people to believe what you can believe so you can feel comfortable believing what you believe, you need to stop and step back and go, whoa, wait a minute.
Well, and I think, in that whole experience part at the 5, we didn't really get into it, but I mean, like an experience, in my case, it was a lot of tests, multiple. So like I sometimes I didn't even feel like I got to the 6 until there were like 1,000 rounds inside the 5. And then, you know, and then it was finally like, okay, this is a working belief that I can use now.
Right.
But, you know,
right.
I
Yeah,
mean, even
that's
some of the things
too.
I believe now have literally taken probably 2 years or so to honestly develop.
Right. And especially when you're changing, that's such an important point, you know, because, and then we were saying why people don't do anything, why they don't change their beliefs. It takes a, you know, it's not, we call it work, but, you know, when you allow yourself to appreciate the process, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like, you know, it feels like you know, even though sometimes it's not fun, you know,
right.
We all go through those stages when we get caught in the emotion of things, you know, or we want to be there yesterday. And then the judgment comes in and we call it all other things. But when you allow yourself to just really embrace,
yeah,
you know,
and I think, and I think just for me, I mean, I think that's why having this spiritual connection became so important to me, because life became genuinely more interesting. Like when things would show up in my reality, it was like, oh, cool. Like I was thinking that, or I was expecting that, or that's not exactly what I expected, but I can work with it. Okay. Whereas before, I mean, you're always, and again, talking about that 6, if you're locked into the lower realm of like just the earth realm, then your only solutions can come from man, can come from somebody else giving them to you, and not from that inner knowing and that inner place.
Right. Yeah, and then you're always looking outside of yourself, wondering what to believe.
Yeah.
And then you can imagine that's going to create an enormous amount of fear, because then you have no vision. Where are you going? You always have to look, well, should I believe this? Should I believe this? What? Well, they said this. Oh, the news said that. And, you know, and that's very, I mean, that's torture. I mean,
it's so funny. I found all my old MBA work. I think I was telling you this before, and I was reading some of it, and I was talking a lot of, like, that was 2016. I was talking a lot about like China and their influence and what was happening. And I had a completely different belief system back then, and like what I was thinking and what I was doing. And I mean, these were like legitimate papers I was handing in and that. And I mean, like now I'm just like, wow, I'm even so much more hesitant to really reveal a belief now that I have of my own. Like, it's more like I just kind of like, I'm more accepting that these things are always kind of evolving.
Evolving, yes. And that's the point too, which you've even noticed in the coaching. It's just like, we go, okay, we've got that. That's great. And then, whoa, here we go. Yeah. There's more. There's always more.
And it's so nice to be free from that, like having a belief and feeling convicted and then having to like force it on other people, or they need to believe it too. Like the more I've learned that these things evolve, the more I'm just like, oh, everybody's evolving too. So like, there's really no need for me to, you know, push this on anybody else or have it pushed on me either.
Right. And then once you get out of that place of there's right, wrong, good, bad, oh my gosh, what freedom that is, you know, and then you can respect where other people are at, because there is no right, wrong, good, or bad. There's an experience, and there's an unconscious experience, and there's a conscious experience. There's one that we were aware that you've chosen it, you know, and then within ourselves, you know, it's not a matter of right, wrong, good, or bad, but it's like, is that what I wanted? You know, and so then it's a matter of going back to the drawing board. It's like being an artist. Oh, that's a little bit out of place. Okay, that was good. But, you know, and when you can see your life like that, every day truly is an adventure.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we are already at 4 minutes to 4. So I will ask you if there's any closing thoughts here or.
You know, I really, just the 2 paths that just struck me so strongly before starting this, that, you know, that I just was so crisp. I just, you know, because I've been thinking that, oh, you know, I can not really bring that in, or how could I say this? I could explain the creative process and ignore that we're making a choice, you know, and the choice occurs early on. It's not occurring here at the 6. It's already occurred previously. So that's the whole point of when you arrive at the 6. It's because you were either conscious or unconscious. You were either felt separate or you felt a part of. And I think separation is a key word there, you know, because, you know, the same thing, like you could have pain, but that pain could be to open you up to awareness. But if you use it from a standpoint of closing down that pain, then when you arrive at this part, you know, are not, how should I say, even not using that pain as a signal.
Yes.
That, okay, I'm not connected. There's something I'm missing here. You know, how can what is it I need to know? If you ignore that and really just clench down on the pain, then you arrive here and then you're in the suffering and you're sick and, you know, and there's a self-denial. You know, I think there's I mean, I've just from, you know, even our coaching group and more as I work with people, I'm seeing how important self-expression is. And we're either in self-expression or self-denial. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's the whole of life. And as I look back and I think of all the people I've worked with, you know, that was sick or whatever, when you look at it, I mean, look how many people do you know that you can just see the presence of self-denial in them.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, and you're great at that, just to acknowledge them. You know, and that's something we can all do when we see that happening to someone and really appreciate what that suffering is.
Yeah. And I think too, I mean, even, you know, in the 6, you know, I'm calling it the lower form, but it's not lower, better, or worse or anything. Mm-hmm. But I think this is also why it's so important to have coaches and have space where people, you know, if I get it, you know, for a long time, I was afraid to express myself openly, and it was, you know, doing it in like a safe environment at first or something that just felt like, okay, I'll just dip a toe or whatever. You know, that's been so helpful for me to actually get to this point. So, and I don't think as a society, I think it is changing now, but you know, we don't put a lot of emphasis on giving space for people to get through these things. And, you know, you got to really seek it out, and usually insurance doesn't cover it, and blah, blah, blah. So,
right. Yeah. No, yeah. Society's based on keeping people oppressed, you know, and those who escape almost like, yeah, I got it. I got mine, you know, rather than that appreciation of who we are and that expression of who we are. So, you know, for the next 3 numbers, we're going to be in the triad of the spiritual, and just we'll be looking at, you know, how we interface with that, the difference. I think a good way to do that will be comparing the differences, you know, because that, I think a large part of why people stay where they are too is they don't realize there's a choice.
Yeah. Or their choices are just so limited because they're just so boxed in. Awesome. Well, I'm very excited to move on to 7 tomorrow. And
Right. Enjoy your meditation tomorrow morning.
Yes, very
so
excited.
Wonderful. Yeah. All right.
All right. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, great. It's wonderful as always. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.